I want to welcome everybody here once again to the session and to the Incarcerated Students Conference. We're so glad that you can join us, and we're so happy to have you. Just a few housekeeping notes. If you haven't been to a session previously, these sessions are being recorded, and we do hope to share those recordings at a later date. And also, the session is going to be focused on our presenter, and as such, there won't be the ability to speak or to make comments. However, we do really want your engagement. And so we do have the chat function, which is open to people, as well as encourage people to use the reactions function, which is a great way to show your support and to have your commentary on what the presenter is talking about. And there is also, of course, the Q&A function, and I encourage all of you and hope that all of you will use that function to submit your questions that you want answered, and we will do our best to try to address those questions and have the presenter address them at the end of the presentation. And once again, thank you all, and we're so glad to have you. And I'm going to turn things over to our fabulous presenter, Carlos Garcia, who is joining us from the Hope Western Prison Education Program at Muskegon Correctional Facility. And I'm so looking forward to this presentation. And without further ado, go ahead. I turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. First and foremost, I would like to thank the Alliance for Higher Education in Prison for sponsoring this inaugural conference, which features incarcerated scholars from around the country. To the conference coordinators and all those who have made this possible, thank you. To my proxy, Ms. Brenda Waters, who made communications between the coordinators and I possible, thank you. To the various Department of Corrections administrators, the Michigan Department of Corrections, and the administration here at the Muskegon Correctional Facility, that is Warden Schiebner, Deputy Warden Winger, Assistant Deputy Warden Clutie, and the Michigan Department of Corrections College Programs Coordinator, Mr. Emmett Short, who has worked diligently to make this whole thing possible. Thank you. Finally, I want to thank my colleagues who have been a constant source of my encouragement throughout my college career. I want to thank Mr. Anthony Robinson and Mr. Alvin Smith, who just so happens to be one of the presenters during the art portion of this conference. If not for their making me aware of this opportunity and their insistence that I submit a proposal, I would never have known that such a thing was possible. And their insistence, I wouldn't have known that this was possible. I am blessed to have them both here as I speak to you today. Gentlemen, scholars, and colleagues, thank you. As said, my name is Carlos Garcia, and I am an incarcerated scholar at the Muskegon Correctional Facility in Muskegon, Michigan. And I am currently in my senior year of a bachelor's degree program born out of the collaborative efforts of the Hope College program and the Western Theological Seminary, both located here in Holland, Michigan. The Hope Western program, which has become affectionately known as HUPEP, has been fully funded to this point by donor dollars, many of which are Hope Western alumni. Many others, however, are everyday citizens, much like many of you participating in this conference or watching from your homes around the country, and interested not so much in retributive justice, but the kind of justice that rehabilitates and restores. It should also be noted that Hope College is a private Christian college, and the Western Theological Seminary, well, the name kind of speaks for itself. That being said, HUPEP's mission is to educate students for lives of leadership and service in the global society through academic and co-curricular programs of recognized excellence in the liberal arts and in the context of a historical Christian faith. As such, a very specific major was created for us in a manner that would satisfy accreditation requirements as well as contribute to the process of rehabilitative and restorative transformation, not of just the students that it engaged, but also the very environments that they currently found themselves in and beyond its classrooms. They titled our major Faith, Leadership, and Service. So when I was approached by Mr. Robinson and Mr. Smith, who had handed me a flyer that looked like it had already been passed through a multitude of hands, I thought to myself, wow, this is a really good idea. And when I saw the list of topics that the conference was going to be highlighting, and having recently submitted an article that was published on memetics and arguing how I believed that the practical applications of memetic theory in the prison environment, which also included the memetic effects of education and how it could be used in prison and beyond its classrooms, and how higher education in prison can impact people, communities, and the world at large, I was all in. Though not fully anticipating the possibility that I would be accepted to present, I began the drafting of my proposal. And several months later, here I sit. Before we get into the meat of my presentation, I think it's important that we first understand that educational programs in college and prison are not new concepts. In fact, according to a 2014 RAND Corporation report, which asked the question, how effective is correctional education and where do we go from here? We are told that correctional education in the United States dates back more than 200 years. It was the Higher Education Act of 1965 that provided Pell Grants that allowed incarcerated students to participate in post-secondary education programs. However, in 1994, the passing of the Violent Crimes Control and Law Enforcement Act no longer allowed those incarcerated in federal state facilities to receive such grants. And but for a few programs that remained, talk of college programs at correctional facilities became like stories of mythical creatures from those who were incarcerated during that once upon a time period would talk about during chow hall and day room conversations. But that was then, and this is now. So let's talk about higher education in prison and the impact that it has on people at its point of contact. That is people like me, people like my colleagues, Anthony and Alvin, not to mention the other 56 students, 9 tutors, and 1,200 plus incarcerated men here at the Muskegon Correctional Facility that I now stand in place of. Let's also talk about our Department of Corrections Director, Ms. Heidi Washington, who with the help of Mr. Kyle Kaminsky, Dr. Sean Taluki, Mr. Steve Irwin, Ms. Jessica Evans, and Ms. Heather Gay, who have been working tirelessly to make post-secondary education in Michigan prison system the model that which the rest of the country might follow. And we can't forget our corrections staff, who are often the most forgotten part of what keeps this machine against insurmountable odds moving forward. All of the above mentioned men and women are but a small few of those who are impacted by this opportunity of a post-secondary education in prison. Not just by the opportunities that are created within the prison walls for those who may be doing life sentences or long indeterminate sentences, but especially for those who will be returning to the communities from which they came. We would talk about that a little bit later in the discussion. What I want to talk about now are the transformations of the lives of the Hope Western Prison Education Program has fostered and nurtured in the men who have been blessed to be a part of its mission. A mission that was created by Dr. Richard Ray, Dr. David Stubbs, and Dr. Pamela Bush, and the presidents of both Hope and Western Theological Seminary. That is President Matthew Scogan of Hope College and Dr. Felix Theo Negraha of the Western Theological Seminary, all of which was based on an idea that had been sparked in them by a woman named Miss Carrie Bosma, formerly of the Calvin Prison Initiative Program at the Richard Hanlon Correctional Facility in Ionia, Michigan, now a newly positioned co-director of the HUPEP program. For myself, this opportunity has been life-altering in many ways. It has given me both the hope and proof that I can be all of those things that I was once told that I could and would never be. It has freed me from the mindset that we, people in general, are defined by our past. And because of those pasts, this is who we will always be. While many will continue to judge us based on our misdeeds, I now know that my past nor my current circumstances are a roadblock to greatness. In fact, my very presence here before all of you is a perfect example and a contradiction of those things, as many have suggested, would prevent me from ever being more than I have been. I have been deemed a worthy spokesperson and an agent of change by my colleagues, the Michigan Department of Corrections, Muskegon Correctional Facility Administration, and the Incarcerated Scholars Conference. Ironically, some of the very people who once held me incapable of being more than I can be are now encouraging me and supporting my efforts to be all that I dream to be. I am an incarcerated scholar, a co-facilitator for men who struggle with addictions, as well as one of several men transformed by the Hope Western program who facilitate groups during our homeroom sessions. I'm the secretary for my state's state-sanctioned Student Voice Council. And as I've said, I've been published in scholarly journals, thereby entering into scholarly conversations with those who have doctorates in sociology, neurology, anthropology, psychology, and theology, many of whom I have read and been inspired by in my own studies. I've been a teacher for incoming students. I've mediated various conflicts. And while I still struggle with trying to wrap my mind around it, I have been called a mentor and a leader in my current community. as well as in the lives of those I communicate with on my social media beyond prison and its fences. I am a father, hopeful that my actions and the choices that I made will be an example to my daughter, who I have not been in the presence of since October 12th of 2007. She was only 2 years old when I left, and she only knows those things about me that other people have told her, and she has only ever seen me in photographic images. However, I hope that she is watching now, and if I may, Haley Jade Garcia, I love you. I do not speak of these things to boast, though the urge to do so is there. However, there are many that I encounter daily who are far greater examples, and whose examples I have in fact followed to become the man that I am, and who I aspire to be as my journey continues, that are far more accomplished than I. And those are just my colleagues. Have I mentioned Anthony and Alvin? These things, these attributes of character, if you will, I could not see prior to my involvement in the Hope Western experience. I had fallen for the lies, and in many ways I had lived up to and exceeded them. After all, why should I care about my life or anyone else's life if all I would ever be was nothing? My experience has been so much more than an academic adventure. It has been an affirmation of something that I have said and that I have heard in the speeches of others. God is not done with me yet. This is the gift that has been given to us, all the way from the director's office down to cell 112 bottom. This is the gift that I have tried, by way of example, to give to the world around me. This is the gift that I now give to you in the hopes that when this day is done, you too will see and feel the impact of what a post-secondary education in prison looks like and what it means to people, the community, and the world at large. Often throughout my academic career, I have heard the argument on all sides concerning education, in particular, a post-secondary education in prison. Some of the very men who I've walked the streets in this prison yard with have at the beginning of my career questioned the logic behind my choice. What good is a degree going to do you in prison? And you know these people aren't going to see you than anything than you've always been. And the one that's my favorite is, what? Now you think you're better than us? These things were difficult for me to hear at the beginning. They were hard because I had bought into the life that I was living, or at the very least, I had accepted the lies that I had been told about who and what I would always be. I mean, they had to be true. After all, no one else in my family had gone to college. My mother and my biological father hadn't even made it out of high school. And the only reason that I had a GED is because I was incarcerated when I took the test. So could it be true? Most of my life has been spent in one kind of institution or another. I had spent all of my teenage years and no less than 35 of my adult years in youth detention facilities, rehabs, county jails, and prison. And quite honestly, the reality of my situation today tells me that I very well may spend the rest of my life in here. So I began to think about these things that I was being told. And just for a moment, those lies had become my truth. I had considered living back into them once again. It was the safest thing to do. I mean, who could fault me for failing if I just continued to live my life as a failure? And I already knew the ridicule that I would face if I didn't succeed. But then something struck me. During those moments of contemplation, I started to think about, what if I succeeded? What if I had actually made something of myself? And I truly wrestled with myself, much like I imagined the Apostle Paul must have been wrestling with himself when he thought about how he wanted to do the right things, but somehow he always ended up doing the very things that he hated, things that all of us do to some extent. Once I moved deeper into my choice and began to form bonds with the 19 other men who had made the choices that I had made and who had to varying degrees faced the same ridicule, laughter, and scorn of our peers, as well as a sense of disregard from those in positions of authority who found it difficult to accept that we, my fellow scholars and I, deserved anything more than punishment for the wrongs that we had been rightfully or wrongfully convicted of. A sentiment that is held by many. I mean, why should we be so fortunate when so many who are not incarcerated cannot afford to send their own children to school? And I get it. It's the way I sometimes feel when the guy in front of me in the chow line gets a bigger piece of cake than I do. I mean, why him? Everybody knows what a piece of work this guy is. The truth of the matter is we all confront situations just like that, believing one is more or less deserving than the other. And in every instance, you'd be right. It's that mimetic nature that hides inside all of us that says, if I can't have it, neither should he. We start to build crazy narratives around that story to justify and deprive the world around us of the very things that make the world, wherever we may be, a better place. Education is a win-win situation. In and out of prison, it just makes sense. And it would be my hope that those politicians and policymakers in Washington, D.C., as well as those in our local governments, which has been the case here in Michigan, that they would see the value of it in the lives of all people, not just the rich, not just the poor, and not just the incarcerated. And I'm sure that many of you already know the impact that education has on people in prison, and not just the incarcerated, but on the people beyond its classroom and its fences. However, some of you watching right now do not, and that's the reason I'm here. A June 2023 report published by the Prison Literacy Statistics and written by a man named Danny McLaughlin showed that more than 2.2 million people are incarcerated around the country. And while various studies presented different estimates of literacy levels within prisons based upon different definitions, an estimated 70% of those incarcerated cannot read above the fourth grade level. That to me is staggering. Even more staggering is of that 2.2 million people, the RAND report, which I cited earlier, referenced that more than 700,000 men and women incarcerated in state and federal prisons will be released each year back to the communities from which they came. And of that 700,000, within 3 years of release, 40% will have committed new crimes or violated the terms of their release and be reincarcerated. More staggering still is a report released by the United States Sentencing Commission conducted in 2018, which showed that the state recidivism rates for rearrest stood at around 68%. And that's for the same post-release time period of 3 years. In the state of Michigan, the cost of housing someone in the state correctional facility stands at about $48,000 a year, which is fully funded by taxpayer dollars. A recent Google search conducted by one of my proxies, Ms. Christy Super, showed that the Michigan Department of Corrections budget for the fiscal year of 2022-2023 was $2.1 billion. This number has lingered somewhere between 1.7 and 2.2 since 2007. Nearly 77% of that budget, or about $1.6 billion, is spent on prison operations. Things such as security, food, behavioral programs, transportation, and staff training. $1.6 billion. Imagine what that kind of money could do for urban development and community-based programming. Here's another fun fact. Did you know that for every $1 spent on education in prison, it saves the taxpayer an average of $4 to $5 the cost of reincarceration or incarceration? This number has, in some states, incurred a savings of up to $12 for every dollar invested. It seems to me that rather investing in prisons, we would be better served investing in prison education programs. Let that sink in for a minute. Just think about it. Have you got it? Now let's consider what I have said previously. Here in Michigan, we have a corrections budget of $2.1 billion. This includes the cost of housing in its correctional facilities, approximately 33,000 men and women at the cost of $48,000 a year per person. Of that budget, only 1% to 2% is allocated towards education. So why does any of this matter? And how does it impact people in communities that 95% of these men and women will be returning to? I gave a few numbers earlier relative to recidivism rates. The highest numbers I gave were relative to a 2018 United States Sentencing Commission report that suggested that the recidivism rate at the state level was around 68% for rearrest within the first 3 years of post-release. This, I am arguing, is what it looks like when you release somebody with no educational programming while they are incarcerated. That number reduces significantly for those who have had some type of educational programming or vocational training to about 43%, which also increases employment possibilities for those on parole by 13%. Now let's consider what the recidivism rate looks like for those who've acquired an associate's degree. Again, by way of Google research, the recidivism rate drops to about 43%, to about from 43% to about 13.7%. That's a 30.3% drop in the numbers of those who might return to prison. So what might that look like for a man or woman who obtains a bachelor's degree? That's right, you guessed it. That number drops again to about 5.6%. And a master's degree literally zeroes that number out. Zeroes that number out. Now try and wrap your mind around that for a second. So for those who believe that the best thing to do to those who commit crimes is to lock them up and throw away the key, I would suggest that study after study shows that punishment, even the punishment of death, is not a deterrent to crime. Yet we continue to throw tax dollars at the problem rather than what should appear to be the solution. The title of my presentation, as submitted to the Incarcerated Scholars Conference, is this: if you could pick your neighbor, who would you rather have? I suppose I could have narrowed that a little bit better and asked the question: if you had to choose between two individuals who had just been released from prison, who would you rather have living next to you? Better yet, who would you rather have living on the same street? Now, I'm sure that many of you would first say, well, it depends on what that person was in prison for. However, that was not the question. And none of this study's research stated anything about crime class. They did not reveal whether the numbers were specific to violent or nonviolent crimes. They simply relayed statistics and percentages of those who had been released from prison with general education, vocational training, and a post-secondary education degree. And the numbers, as I presented to you, were very telling. So I would ask the question again, this time without regard to the nature of crime, and I want you to think about this as I move forward. Who would you choose? I now want to tell you a story about a man named Mr. Andre Williams. He is a fellow colleague of mine, and he has been in prison for quite a few years. He has been in various programs and has in fact become a quite skilled horticulturalist. He says that by working with plants, coupled with the things that he has learned as a student at the HWPE program, has given a vision as to how he might be an impact on the world beyond the classroom and beyond prison fences. He has formulated in his mind a concept, as well as on paper, a concept called developing green life. What this concept does is it targets at-risk youth, in particular, those who have been in and out of the system with no real concept or worldview about how life is developed and cultivated to grow young men and women into the people they will eventually become. He believes that by teaching young men and women about how do things grow from a single seed into things of beauty that nourish the soul, not only nourish the soul, but also actually provide life-sustaining fruit, that he can teach them about their own worth. He believes the process of watering, cultivating, and pruning plants to make them stronger and more productive are the very lessons that we can apply to our own lives and the lives of those who will follow. For him, this is the greatest gift that he might give to the world as a means of correcting a wrong that can never fully be righted. The HUPEP program has impacted him in such a way that he now envisions ways in which he can help build his community to a place of hope and promise for all. For him, this is also a way that he believes he might honor the memory of the lives that he has affected by the choices that he has made in his past. He tells me it is important that at-risk youth know what it means to care for and love themselves and something or someone else, and this can be achieved through the seasonal growing process and the effort that it takes to grow plants into a healthy, mature state. Education in prison initiates a process by which we begin to see ourselves and awaken to the damage that we have inflicted on the communities, and most importantly, on the people and lives in those communities. Education shows us another way, a way that moves us from a state of self-centeredness to a state of understanding that true value of community, the true value of humanity can never fully be appreciated or made completely whole when all we can see is ourselves. Our humanity from its very inception is meant to be a shared experience. I am mindful, however, that countless of others who have had their shared experiences and opportunities, such as education, destroyed, damaged, and in some cases, completely removed by crime. I am also mindful of those who, as a result of financial inabilities, through no fault of their own, will not have the opportunity that my colleagues and I have been blessed with, which is all the more reason why we take this so seriously. We have been given a chance to give back some of what we have taken. It is a means by which we honor the lives of those lost, as well as the lives of family who will forever be wounded by our actions. Of course, there is the hope that we might also one day be forgiven, while knowing at the same time that they may never happen. This was made clear to me during a recent conversation that several of my colleagues and I had with a member of the Michigan House of Representatives, that is, with Mr. Representative Luke Meerman. Representative Meerman and other legislators believe that programs such as HWPP are essential to the lives of the men and women who participate in them. He acknowledged the numbers, as I have provided to you earlier, associated with those who complete such programs. And while this might make financial sense, he said, this does nothing for the broken heart of a child whose father has been murdered, or to the sense of fear felt by the victim of a violent crime or rape. He himself stated that he never expected to be sitting in a prison holding a conversation with convicted felons, some of which who have been convicted of horrendous acts, while discussing at the same time that such impact that such programs have on the lives of so many, when he too once believed that the best way to reduce crime was to lock them up and throw away the key. I reminded Mr. Meerman that prison did not create crime, nor did it create criminals, but they could often are more radicalized kinds of criminals in facilities that don't have opportunities like those placed here at the Muskegon Correctional Facility. It is my belief that we, those who engage in such vocational programs and post-secondary academic programs, can and will change not only the culture of prisons, but as we are currently doing here right now, but we can change the very communities that we have helped destroy. We have been gifted with a new vision, a new hope, and the belief that the only impossibilities before us are the ones that we create for ourselves. We need only think back to the story that I just shared with you about Mr. Andre Williams, and be assured there are dozens just like him with dreams and concepts just as ambitious. Representative Meerman prayed with us, that is Mr. James Bell, Mr. Ronald Williams, Mr. Terry Crater, and myself. He cried with us, and he showed us the impact that such programs had on his life. And I cannot thank him enough for his honesty, his humility, and his passion, and the support of our efforts. Before parting ways, I asked Representative Meerman, sir, given the choice between two formerly incarcerated individuals who had been recently released from prison, who would you rather have as your neighbor? The one who had been doing what we're doing here at the Muskegon Correctional Facility, or the one who continues in a life of crime? Do I even need to tell you what his response was? I think I do. He looked at my colleagues and I, and he said, I'd pick people just like you. Imagine that. 4 convicted criminals of various crimes, some of us doing life, others with uncertain outdates, and he chose us. You might imagine the lump that was in my throat hearing such a thing from such a man. This is the impact that we have on people, community, and the world at large. I am an incarcerated scholar who prays that one day my commitment, better yet, the commitment of my colleagues to faith, leadership, and service will be the very reason that you choose us as your neighbors as well. Thank you, scholars. Thank you, ISC, for allowing me to be a part of this movement. I also want to thank my friends and my family who might be watching right now, and their belief in me and my struggle. And I cannot forget my professors and the leadership team of the Hope Western Prison Education Program, in particular, Ms. Sarah Zoller and Amy Piesker, for helping me understand that while I must be in prison, prison need not be in me. To the world at large, when men and women dare to dream and begin to believe that we are not defined by our geographic location or our past, we can and will change the world. And to those incarcerated in the state of Michigan, dare to dream, dare to believe that you can be better than you were before you came here. The opportunity is yours. Thank you, everybody, and have a blessed day.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here. I appreciate you making the presentation. I appreciate your words. I wanted to let you feel the accolades, feel the hearts coming up from the responses. I think that you have some of your biggest fans in the audience here. I wanted to ask the first question on behalf of Brenda, who wanted to ask you, what has the relationship been between the staff and the students at your facility? What has it been like? So how have you received the program, and what has been the effect on the facility overall? So it's a two-part question. I'd be happy to repeat it if you need.
No, I got the question, and thank you, Brenda, for asking the question. Um, you know, it's been a really strange experience. I mean, from the administrative level, this program has been embraced, and they've been very helpful in trying to advance the things that we're trying to do here. We've changed the culture of this place. From some of the staff, there's been a little bit of pushback, as I've said in my presentation, because they can't quite understand exactly what it is that's going on here. And if you could look into this prison, in particular the housing unit that we're in right now, the college program is all in one particular area. In that unit alone, we have changed the entire fabric of it. I don't think the staff are fully aware of what we do as mediators, is what we do as leaders in the community. Violence levels have gone down, misconduct levels have gone down, and people are encouraged by what we're doing. And this is students that are encouraged by what we're doing, or potential students, and they want to be a part of that. As a result, they tend to shape their behavior in a different manner, because this is a big responsibility. And while some of the staff have still been a little bit iffy about what's going on here, overall, we've been very well received. And there's a lot of encouragement. A lot of times we'll get it in whispers, though. They don't want to be the one like, oh my goodness, but we get it in whispers, and we appreciate any type of, gratitude or encouragement that we get from wherever it comes from, because like I said, we really do hope to change the world, and we take this very seriously. So thank you, Brenda, for asking the question.
I love that expression. We get it in whispers. I can already tell that I'm going to be using it elsewhere. At the beginning of the presentation, I told you that I love this framing of thinking about who would you want to be your neighbor. And when you ask that to people who don't know anybody directly impacted, although that's harder and harder to find, and we're getting to the point, especially in this country, where we know at least one person who's been directly impacted by incarceration. But asking it that way really helps people to rearrange their mental models, right? But I'm curious, because you said, oh, yeah, it's my wheelhouse, but I have a feeling you have so much more you would say if you had another hour to talk. And so I do wonder, what else would you want to explore further? Now that you've been exploring this topic for a while, it sounds like, what more do you want to explore?
Well, some of the studies that I do, and I kind of mentioned it in my presentations, is I am a very big promoter of this thing called mimetic theory. I truly believe that we can shape the world based on our behaviors and the importance that we place on the things that we value. And I'd like to talk about, if we learn to put value on each other more, we would learn to see each other as more valuable people, and we would respect each other a lot more. When it comes to rehabilitation, prison reform, and sentence reform, and things like that, I'm one of these guys that believe that if you really want to change the mindset of the incarcerated population, you need to do that right from the start. The minute we are incarcerated and we come through that reception center, rather than stigmatizing somebody who's already been stigmatized, and more times than not, they have come from a stigmatized community, that we start to engage their humanity right from the start. And I think that's very important towards rehabilitation, and it's just something that I have a lot of hope to see in the future.
I just wanted to ask, what was the theory that you said?
It's called mimetic desire.
I know. Okay, so yeah, good. I'm so glad you re-said that, because you said it during your presentation. And I said, oh, I'm going to need him to. So
right.
Say it one more time, just because
mimetic desire.
Mimetic. I haven't heard that
desire.
term before. Okay.
Yeah, I actually. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted you to say more. I had never heard that term before.
Well, a lot of people haven't heard it. And I get a lot of flack about it, a little ribbing, but it's not in a bad way. It was a theory created by a man by the name of Rene Girard, who believed that our desires are not our own. And because of these desires, the more importance I place on, let's say, this bottle of water, the value that I place on this now attracts attention. And other people want this bottle of water, not because it's a bottle of water, but because somebody has placed importance on that. And I believe that we can do those kind of things in a prison setting where we can change the culture. And it's basically, like I said, it's just that your desires and the things that you find important were not really yours. You're not autonomous in that sense. It's something that you acquired from somebody else. We can look up at the sky and suddenly somebody's looking up at the sky with us and they have no idea why. That is mimetic desire right there. It's
Thank
a pay
you
it
for
forward type
explaining
of
that.
thing.
Yeah, I can't wait to do a little digging on that. I
I encourage you.
I will. I want to just give attention to a participant, Savannah Akers. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, who really, really wants to know how you are doing. And so I will add to that for the purposes of just drawing that out more, how you are doing. And I'm wondering as well if you have any advice that you would give to somebody who's maybe in a similar situation as you have been and maybe starting their higher education journey, what advice would you give to them? So it's a two-parter again, so I can have you answer Savannah's question of how you are, but also would you have any advice?
All right. Well, first of all, to Savannah, I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. And I hope you're doing well also. As to your second question, the advice that I would give is don't let anything get in your way. A lot of times, one of the things that kind of almost held me up from making the decision was how my peers might think of me. You know, it was like I was stuck in that prison mindset. And we're worried about how other people's are going to view us. And sure enough, it happened. When we started this program and guys saw us with our backpacks, we suffered a lot of ridicule. People were making fun of us. They couldn't understand what we were doing or why. What was the benefit to what you're doing? What is the purpose? We were sellouts, is basically what it looked like. I would tell people, listen, don't sit back and wait for life to happen for you. Make it happen. Because if you're sitting and waiting for life to be what you want it to be, you're going to be sitting and waiting for life to be what you want it to be for a long time. Dare to dream and dare to reach for that dream.
Thank you. I have another question for you from Karen May, who says, I was particularly interested in this session because I'm not aware of other faith-based prison education programs. Can you talk a little bit about the faith aspect of the program and how it might have influenced you? Or are there other intersections that might be interesting to talk about?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. Because I am a Christian, it actually gave me more direction. It sounded or grounded me in my faith more because, again, you don't see these types of programs that often. And it's a servant type program, and it teaches that the people around us are just important as we are. And it teaches us how to be servants to our community. And I think that's why we have such an impact at the Muskegon Correctional Facility, the way that we do, is that people see us leading in a servant manner. It's not about me. It's how can I make you better? These were the things that Jesus taught us. You know, he taught us to reach out to the poor, to the sick, to the needy, to the unhealthy. And I've seen that play out day after day in this community amongst my colleagues, and not just with people in the program, but with people outside of the program. When it comes to sickness and when it comes to the needs of others, we've done a lot of things like that. So the fact that it is a faith-based program, it creates a different kind of atmosphere for us. And it's not just the faith thing. They're not trying to promote or push anybody into Christianity. And I think that's one of the things that makes it far more beautiful to me, is because they allow that to reveal itself, and it's something that shows up inside of you. I don't know if that answered the question.
It answered a question. I hope it answered a question.
Right.
There, another question came, was asking you to maybe describe the opportunities that you think staff could provide to incarcerated people to create an environment of growth amongst themselves.
Are you talking about like the corrections officer staff or the administrative staff? What?
You know, I think that could go for either. I just wonder if you have other ideas of other opportunities that could be provided that would maybe provide that kind of environment.
You know, the funny thing is that when this program became part of the facility that I'm at right now, as I understand it, there was also academic opportunities offered to the staff as well to get them to see what was going on, that the program would be something that they too could participate in, maybe even their children could participate in. But some of the things that I would encourage with staff, whether it be from an administrative level or, you know, from the feet on the ground type level, talk to some of the guys that are in the program, try and understand and find out exactly what it is that this program is doing and the real benefits that this program has. Some of the conversations that I've had in whispers with some of the people, they really enjoy the program, but they didn't know a lot about what was going on. They thought it was, oh, well, you guys are just getting a free education and things like that. They didn't see that we are actually creating a new environment for the officers here. We're making prisons a safer place for everybody. And if it's safer for me, it's safer for the officers as well. So I think you just get them more involved, have them ask the real questions and sit with us. Come and sit with the students that are part of the program. Ask the questions that you want to ask.
There's been a number of people asking what your plans are academically. Do you want to share that or private?
It is my hope, because I'll be graduating here. I'm a senior in the program. I'll be graduating soon. I don't intend to, to cease my academic career. It's my hope that with my studies, and I try to reach out to a bunch of different people, beyond the prison environment, in the hope that I might one day get a master's scholarship program from somebody, that somebody say, hey, listen, we'd like to sponsor you, that kind of thing. So if anybody's listening, just know I'm a good student. But I'd really like to get as far as I possibly can in my academic career. I'm really interested in philosophy. I'm really interested in political science. So those are some of the types of things that I would like to pursue, because I have a real hunger to change the prison environment and prison reform.
Amen to that. There is a question about what ideas do you have maybe to bridge the gap between the community and the prison?
It's funny that you should ask that, because this is something that my colleagues and I have actually been trying to put together, some type of program where we might be able to invite the community in here, perhaps even a town hall meeting type of thing, where they can ask questions, because that's one of the things that I think is missing. Once a person is accused of a crime and arrested, it no longer becomes about the person, the perpetrator, or the person who was offended. It's the state now takes over. It's the people versus the state of, and both parties just kind of fade into oblivion. So I would like to see programs where the community is able to come into the facility, whether they be survivors of crime or whatever the case may be, and sit with the people that are here and just have real conversations with them.
Now you're singing my song. That sounds like a great idea. I love that. Let's talk more about that. You've had a bunch of people, just wanted to highlight a bunch of people who are sending you their love anonymously and identifying themselves. A lot of supporters that are participants in the session. So I wanted to shout that out and let you know about that. I have another question for you. I'm wondering whether or not you've thought a little bit about how your work might challenge, how it might contribute to, how it might change existing scholarship, or because I know you've done a lot of research, you've done a lot of work in this area. How do you think that your work or your future work might be able to change, might be able to challenge what is existing scholarship that's out in the field?
I think it'll challenge people, because they have to look at things from a different perspective. They have to quit looking at things from an us against them mentality, and see that the only way things are actually going to be brought to balance is when we start to work with each other. But that's where the challenge is because you see me on this side of the screen and you automatically have an assumption of me. Maybe not the people as part of the conference, but those who are in normal society. You're in prison and they automatically assume the worst, but that's because we create that environment that forces them to assume the worst, just to advance legislation or policy and things like that. So some of the challenges I see is actually getting involved with the community, and some of the pushback you may get from people who don't want community and prison populations to be reconciled with one another. There has to be an enemy. And I think that right now we're the enemy. There always has to be a bad guy. And I don't see things that way. I don't think there has to be a bad guy. There's always going to be a bad guy, but there doesn't always have to be one.
Well said. I have one more question for you, and I think I'll make sure that we didn't miss any questions, but I think we've asked all the questions. But for all the people that attended this session, what would you say what would you like for them to take away? What's the biggest takeaway that you would like them to walk away from this presentation with?
Well, the biggest takeaway that I would like them to take from this presentation is the fact that I mentioned in this presentation. 95% of the people who are currently incarcerated will be returning back to the communities. And the presentation is titled that, Who Do You Want? Who do you want as your neighbor? Who do you want living in your neighborhood? We can continue to create the problems, and send people back out there uneducated, no opportunities. But that creates another problem altogether. When people are sent back out into an environment where all they know is a particular thing, they tend to resort back to that which they know. So I would like them to take with them that there are people in here who are willing, ready, and able to change the world. Give us the opportunity. See us for people, because that's what we are. It doesn't excuse the things that we've done. It doesn't justify some of our actions, but we are human and we want the same opportunities that are provided to people out there. We can change the world. And like I said, 95% of the people are coming back to your communities. And that's something that needs to be considered. How do you want them to return to you?
I wish I could just take that snippet and now play it as part of Ved's ending plenary. Like, it's so perfectly said. And I think, yeah, you really, really nailed it. So I want to thank you again so much for taking the time, for your presentation, for your work. And I'm one of your supporters now that's hoping that you continue with your academic journey and
Absolutely.
Do more work and challenge the field. And there's a lot of people who are saying hello and sending their love. I don't know if you're able to look at the chat, but
yeah, I've seen some of them.
You're seeing them? Okay, good.
Yes.
And I want to just give you a chance to look through those as well, because I know that you've been talking and haven't been able to look. So I'll give you the chance to look through those, and I'll just let everybody know who wasn't here when I first started that this session has been recorded, and there is a plan to hopefully share it as widely as possible. But of course, that process is going to take some time given how many participants, how many presenters, and all the complicated scenarios that we find ourselves in with various corrections departments. So we are going to work very hard to share as much as we can. And please look to the Alliance social media pages as well as the website for updates about that and us being able to share these wonderful recordings. And thank you to you all who came to the session. And I encourage you to join us for the ending plenary, which is happening, I think, at 4 o'clock, I'm in Eastern Standard Time. I just gave it away. So I cannot correct mentally for the other. 4 o'clock is what? 3 o'clock Central, 2 o'clock Mountain, 1 o'clock West. Did I just do it? Pacific? Did I just do it?
Yeah.
All right. Time sometimes is very challenging for me, but
Right.
I did it. So yeah, looking forward to that as well. And I'm gonna stop recording, but thank you again.
Can I say one more thing before?
Oh, of course, please.
I just again want to thank, I really, really want to thank again, Mr. Emmett Short, and the MDOC, especially the staff here at the Muskegon Correctional Facility and their administration. They have done all kinds of things that have made this possible. This is a first. So thank them, thank the Michigan Department of Corrections, Director Washington, the HWPEP staff. Thank you.
Wait, when you say this is the first, say more.
This is the first thing that's happened in Michigan. This has never happened. We've never had a Zoom conference like this before. So your inaugural event is also our inaugural event.
What? That feels amazing.
Yes.
That feels amazing.
So, yeah, okay, Mr. Short did it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Short, and to all of you over there. We appreciate it. Okay, I'm going to stop recording. Bye, everybody. Feel free to take till the next session.